Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to another IPSE lunchtime webinar with me, Luan. The topic today is social media do's and don'ts. There is no rule book when it comes to social media, but as you'll see throughout this presentation, unfortunately, common sense doesn't always prevail. I've got lots of examples to share with you. Before I begin, just because we are looking at screens and you might want to know who the voice is right now. Some of you may have attended my webinars before or come along to the session at National Freelancers Day last month. It was great to see so many people there. I have 20 years experience in agency, client side and consultancy roles as a marketer. I'm a chartered marketer and proud to be a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Marketing. Social media is one of my core topics. I call myself a T-shaped marketer because I have a really broad background, but then a real deep dive specialism in the world of social media. And I've written 2 books on that topic, Relax, It's Only Social Media and The Social Media Planner. I consult, but I also train, examples such as today, but I am a LinkedIn Learning course instructor. So if you have a premium LinkedIn account and have access to their huge online learning library of courses, I've got 7 courses in there on marketing foundations topics, on content marketing and social media. With Enterprise Nation, I'm an accredited trainer for their She Means Business campaign, which means I'm accredited to train Facebook and Instagram. And I'm a coach for Google's Digital Garage initiative, as well as being an IPSE ambassador. So I'm going to dive into some do's and don'ts. I'll talk for about half an hour, plenty of time for questions. If you've got any burning questions as we go through, please do type them into the box. If not, I'll check them at the end. And I will say that these do's and don'ts are in no particular order. We are recording the session so you can get a playback of them as well as a copy of the slide deck as well. So just to get started, my do's and don'ts kind of are 2 halves to them because there's no point telling you one without the other. And I think it's really important with social media that you don't dive straight in. It seems that it's free to download the apps to your phone, to sign up and create accounts. But that's kind of where the biggest problems I see come from, is that people sign up and want to start posting straight away, but they haven't really thought about it. They haven't really set themselves up with a policy. So even if you are a freelancer or contractor, you know, outside a large organization that's full of policies around do's and don'ts, I still think it's important for you to do some preparation and give yourself some guidelines on the kind of things that you would share, you wouldn't share, sources that you would share from, etc. So have a clear social media policy, even if it is just yourself. Think before you post, and I'll come back to this. I think it's really important, again, that you write a plan and you have some messaging in your plan, and that you share that if you do have colleagues or if you do have partners and affiliates that you work with, and that you do undertake some training and keep developing, because the biggest thing about social media is that it changes. It changes all the time. It changes week by week. And I've got some resources at the end of this slide deck that will actually help you keep up to date with those changes, as well as some training options if that's what you're looking for. So don't dive straight in without having a plan and doing a bit of preparation. And in terms of that, I think if you kept your social media policy or just have this in front of you, this think before you post is really important. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? And I think actually the biggest do before you post anything is it relevant to your target audience? Is it useful for them? It's not just about what you want to share and what you're interested in. It's not about you, it's about your audience. So packed full of examples in this slide deck. While it's not great to see social media mistakes happening, it's great if you have a presentation on this kind of topic. And here's one, a few years old now. This was in HMV. We're making a number of head office redundancies. Unfortunately, they didn't have a social media policy in place, and someone live tweeted the redundancies that were happening. One of the team literally sat there tweeting live from HR where they were all being made redundant. So not a good thing to do. Obviously, out of all their preparation planning for the redundancies, they didn't think about the fact that this could happen. And it does. My biggest do is also to focus your efforts where it counts. There are lots of social media platforms, even Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, the main four. There's a lot to do if you want to be active on all social media platforms. But I think it's much more important to do one or two things really well and focus where it counts. And the concept of this image is on the right about fishing where the fish are. And that's about being on the social media platforms where you're going to find your target audience and where you can engage with them and be most helpful. So it's really about focus rather than trying to do everything. Don't be anonymous or mysterious on social media. Any marketing activity, people do business with people. So to be anonymous without a profile photo or hiding behind logos, or not even that, just having the egg head or the question mark on your social media profiles is not best practice to building connections and building your audience. You do want to make a really good first impression. You only get one chance to make that first impression, so you've got to have your social media profiles set up and ready to do business before you start building your audience and before you start sharing content. And just a few of those things that need to be included are a good profile photo, are a real username, whether that's your Twitter handle, your Instagram handle, LinkedIn profile. You know, do think about what those names are for when people are typing them in and searching. And if you can personalize that URL as well to tidy it up, make it look neater when you put it on business cards and email signatures, etc., that's really important. It's important to use keywords not only in your profiles as you set them up, but in your content as well, because that will help people find you for what they need to find you for. And brand your page, whether that's color settings, whether that's a branded header image, whether it is the imagery that you can put on there. Brand your page up and keep it fresh as well, particularly the background images along the top and things like that. You know, really do make an effort to make a good first impression. Social media, again, you know, because it's free, because it's quick to download and relatively quick to set up, sometimes people don't spend enough time on this stage to go and dive straight in. So please do spend time setting those up so that people really can get to know you. And it's all about attention to detail on social media. This is where some of the biggest mistakes happen because people aren't paying attention. Don't share content you haven't read. I think this is really important, that sometimes we come across content, we're reading news feeds and scrolling through, and we find a great headline that we think is relevant to our audience. But if you haven't read it, you don't know what you're sharing. It could have calls to action, it could have offers for your competitors, it may have pros and cons that you don't agree with. So always share content you've read and double check links work. Really simple, but if you're sharing links and taking time to post content and then people can't click through to it, you've kind of wasted your time and their time as well. This, I thought, was a great example of kind of not paying attention to detail, was that an organisation, a consultancy, tweeted, more than 1/5 of UK consumers use Twitter. Do you? Well, the answer is going to be yes, because they tweeted this. I'm not against the fact that they wanted to share this research about that, but just the context and the question they asked was just a bit silly and irrelevant on that. So you really have got to think about it and pay attention. This tweet by BlackBerry was great. How to keep up the conversation on Twitter. Use a BlackBerry, but actually you can see that it's been tweeted. The arrow at the bottom points to that whoever was tweeting this was actually using an iPhone. Now, not everyone is super eagle-eyed on social media, but you can bet if you make a mistake like this and you're a brand or anything in particular, you know, people love picking up on mistakes. People will spot it. If you have any time at all, maybe this lunch hour, maybe later in the week, I'd highly recommend you check out @JohnLewis on Twitter. @JohnLewis on Twitter isn't the retail store, that's @JohnLewis Retail. @JohnLewis is an American academic, but his Twitter account is just hilarious. It's full of banter because he does address every question that's by mistake addressed to him. So there's one message here in terms of making sure if you're mentioning people or tweeting people or sending any social media messages that you send it to the right person. But please do just go and have a look at this account. It's very well managed for people that are making those mistakes. It's very on brand, particularly around Christmas when it's John Lewis Christmas campaigns. And actually Twitter featured this guy in their own campaign last Christmas. But again, it's about attention to detail. John Lewis is an academic in America. At John Lewis Retail is the handle for the store if you have a complaint or a comment. Hashtags, we know how important hashtags are to social media. Started on Twitter, even more important on Instagram. Now in terms of getting your content found, they've been reintroduced to LinkedIn. Really important way of telling people what your content is about, finding content that's relevant, and getting your content found. But it does again come with an air of caution. If you get, again, I haven't included it in here, but if you've got a bit of downtime, Google Justin Timberlake and Jimmy Fallon, because there's a great YouTube clip of the pair of them talking in hashtags and how ridiculous it sounds if you overuse hashtags. I would suggest on Twitter 2 or 3, LinkedIn 2 or 3. They're not really used on Facebook unless it's for a branded campaign, but of course they are used quite prolifically, up to 30 of them on Instagram. Different ways of finding hashtags. Do your hashtag research. There are some tools available to do that. A couple that I use are hashtagify.me and an app for Instagram called Tagomatic. I will include some resources on all of these details at the end, but I think it's really important to not overuse them and to do your research. And do your research if you're thinking of branding your own campaign or using something for an event, because I'll just let you take this next couple of slides into consideration. The first is not to piggyback on hashtags for the sake of it. Unfortunately, this particularly comes up around celebrities and celebrity deaths and what's trending. Here was a great kind of feedback on Cheerios talking about Prince when he sadly died a few years ago. Someone commented, mysteriously somehow my love of Prince and my sadness at his passing have transferred into a love and desire for Cheerios. It's not always relevant to jump onto hashtags for the sake of it. Make sure it's relevant to you, your audience, and your business. I'll just let you take this slide in for a second. Hashtags do not have a space in them. And sometimes, once you see things like this, you can't unsee them, unfortunately. So this is just a fun reminder to take into account and look for spaces in your hashtags before you start to use them for your campaigns. Now, this one, I'm sure actually was intentional, entirely intentional, if we consider the presenters and the tone of their content. But again, it can be read either way, and once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. But they have used this one to particularly good effect, I think. But it's still a great example of how you need to pay real attention to hashtags. They're so useful, but they can also cause big headaches as well. Now, scheduling social media is, one way that many social media managers will make best use of their time. Any freelancer has to manage their time effectively, so many of us will schedule social media in advance, whether that's using Facebook and actually just scheduling it on the page, or whether it's using a third-party tool such as Hootsuite or Buffer. But we do need to be really conscious about this as well. And some examples here, Tesco obviously use a scheduler. They do tweets at the beginning of their day and the end of their day on their customer service accounts. And in isolation, this looks fine. It's sleepy times, we're off to hit the hay, see you tomorrow for some more Tesco tweets. But this went out right in the middle of the horse meat scandal. It's really important, if you've scheduled tweets, scheduled any social media content, if there's anything affecting your business, if there's anything going on worldwide and in the news, that you make sure you double check what you've got scheduled and amend it if you need to. Again, if you're managing multiple social media accounts and it's not in your country of origin, wasn't really relevant for Starbucks Ireland to also be tweeting about happy hour and what makes you proud to be British. Hashtags are useful. They're useful for grouping content, grouping campaigns, measuring campaigns, but sometimes, and we saw this just last week as well, when a hashtag that was being used by Adidas and the launch of their new Arsenal kit is sometimes abused by the audience. When you invite people to get involved in hashtags, sometimes it can backfire. For McDonald's stories, people were inviting stories of their love of McDonald's and their trips to McDonald's. Unfortunately, they didn't experience wholly positive feedback. Now, whether the next one is a social media fail or success can be taken either way. I'm sure it's not what they intended when Waitrose asked people to finish the sentence, "I shop at Waitrose because." You may have seen this, you may have not, but I just think, again, it's a classic example of social media and how users interact. And again, I'll let you look at this for a few seconds before I continue. Lots of great examples there from grammar of "I shop at Waitrose because you say 10 items or fewer, not 10 items or less," which is important. Talking about the target audience, it's the only place where people can talk about class and why they shop at Waitrose. So again, probably not what the marketing team intended to happen, but actually they've turned it into something I think is quite positive and supportive of their brand. But it is something really to be aware of. Back to some do's and don'ts as well. I think what's really important, that social media is not just about broadcasting. It's not just about X number of posts a day on the different social media platforms. Engagement should be your top priority. Yes, you need to share some content, but it's not just about chucking things at a wall and hoping they'll stick. You want to engage with your audience. This is the place to have real-time conversations, and encouraging involvement works if you write content so that it's shareable or so that people want to get involved. Asking questions works really well. I see some people ask questions and then give multiple choice options for people that may be short on time to encourage people to get involved really quickly. Starting discussions, but start it in a way that whoever's reading the discussion, and this happens particularly in LinkedIn groups and Facebook groups, that you write the discussion and it's not written in a way that people will just go yes or no. It's written in a way that's an open question to encourage people to get involved. And competitions can work really well on social media. Yes, there are some people that just enter every competition that they possibly find on social media, but in terms of engaging an audience, building an audience, talking about your products, getting people involved in your products, and running competitions can be low cost and really valuable as well. Just always think about adding value to your audience and the perception of your business rather than just posting all about you content. My recommendation is don't buy followers and likes. Don't buy those on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Not quite as prevalent as they used to be many years ago on social media, but it still happens all the time. And it can be quite concerning if you're particularly starting out and you want to show people that you've got an audience, but it's really not worthwhile. You'll have the numbers, but you won't have the engagement. You won't have people looking to buy from you, to speak to you, to come along to your events, etc. It's really much more important to focus on the quality of the audience and make sure that you're reaching the right people, whether that's the right age group, people in the right location, people in the right job title, rather than having a huge audience. And to check that you're reaching the right people, you can find all of that data in your own social media analytics. Don't forget about your own platform. This is a question I get asked more and more, is do I even need a website now that I'm on social media? It can be tempting because audiences, people are using social media. They attract the biggest audiences, particularly Facebook. Twitter, Instagram, that's where people are on most days. But I think social media is a really important way of driving traffic to your own website. It's also a really great tool for building your email list to be able to communicate with people directly into their inbox. We saw just last week that Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp went down for several hours. People couldn't see photos and images that they were posting on their accounts. So it's really dangerous if you were to just build your business and engage with your audience on platforms that you don't own. So don't forget about your own platform, your own website, and think about how you can use social media to get people to your own website, where you can offer them more content, where you can capture their email address, etc. Don't place all of your business risk on someone else's land. Don't forget to tell people you're on social media. I look at a lot of websites, I see a lot of business cards, posters in retail stores that just don't tell people they're on social media, which makes it harder to engage with them, to follow them. It makes people have to do more for themselves, and people don't always want to spend that time on it. So make it really easy. Add the icons and links to your website. That's where people will go to look for it. Add them to your email signature. Add things to your business card. I don't think we need fax numbers or even physical addresses on our business cards anymore, but let people know how they can stay up to date, see what you're working on, see where they can find you on your business card. And if you do have any marketing literature, whether that's posters, brochures, handouts, etc., just put the icons on there, or put the handles on them themselves to make it really easy for people to find you. Don't make it difficult, because people just won't do it. Do, on any social media platform you're using, where it's relevant, use a type of content that is relevant to what you're trying to say and to how your audience might want to consume that content. And mix it up, repurpose, do something in words first, then create it as an image, as a PowerPoint presentation, or as a quote, as a meme. Use videos if it's relevant, if you have something to say. But my top tip with video would be to always put a caption on it, so that if people do have the sound down, they can still read the words about what you're saying. I think it's important to think about the idea first and then the best way to share that, but do use a mixture of words, images and video. What we're trying to do on social media, and more people are using mobile to consume social media, so we're aiming for the thumb-stopping moment. So if it's something that stands out in terms of words, images and video, that is what's going to get attention on your content. But mix it up, don't just stick to one. Different ones for different platforms, for different purposes, but whatever's most appropriate to your content, mix it up and use that content type. Social media, it may be free, but it does take a lot of time, it does take a lot of resources and planning. So you do need to think long term. There is no quick wins, there is no overnight success on social media, no matter how many times you may see it reported with influencers. If people do appear overnight, then it's often not sustained. So do think long term in your planning, what you're trying to achieve. Tie it back to your business objectives. Don't expect that you're going to post a tweet and then the world is going to come knocking on your door. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. There is no such thing as a quick win or overnight success. That is the end of my do's and don'ts. It's 5 to 1. As you can see, there was a real mixture in there. Some quick wins for you, some things just as a kind of refresher, things to think about. If anyone has any questions on anything I've covered, wants some more information, then please do just pop that in the chat box. And I will talk to you about future events and some further resources in a second. Any questions from you today? Yep, first one, writing to share. I think that is the biggest thing that's most important. I see a lot of social media content that is just read my blog. Here's a motivational quote, and that's okay. And it's okay to mix it up amongst your content with calls to action. But I think when you're using social media for business, it's very much about trying to drive a result. You're trying to drive people to do something, to engage with you. So do always think when you're writing your content, what do you want people to do when they've read this? What do you want people to do when they've seen this tweet or when they've seen something on Facebook? If you want them to share it, then tell them to share it. If you want them to enter the competition, then tell them to enter the competition. If you ask them a question, make it something really simple so they can just get involved with it, because that will help you increase the reach of your own content. But it also, it's more meaningful than here's a blog, have a read. So always think about shareability rather than just kind of chucking content out there. Okay, a question about mentioning people in posts. Yeah, that's a great way. If you mention people in posts, that they get a notification that they've been mentioned, so you get right in front of those people that you're mentioning. But also it's a good way to kind of add context. What I would say on this is only mention people if it's really relevant to them. So if you are kind of quoting them, or if they were involved at the event, if it's a write-up because you heard them talk. It's quite hard when you get tagged into something just because people are seeking opinions, because it might not always be relevant to that person you're tagging in, and because they're tagged in, they're kind of obliged to respond. So someone's asking detail on that around using buffer for LinkedIn posts, but they're finding it hard to tag in individuals. Personally, I don't use scheduling tools for LinkedIn because I like to be on the platform to see what people are posting in the news feed and to see what's in my notifications tab. So I tend to not schedule on that, but I do know that even if you're on LinkedIn and sometimes you're putting at and starting to type, then sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So it probably isn't about the tool that you're using, it's just sometimes it can be a bit glitchy. So whether it's relevant or not, yeah, that's the biggest reason why I don't schedule content on LinkedIn, because I don't think LinkedIn is so time specific. It's not like a tweet that is only going to be around for a couple of hours before people scroll past it. So I prefer to do my LinkedIn content in the moment when I'm going to be on there and looking at what's going on. But I will check that out for you. I've got your name. I think we're connected, so I will come back to you directly on that question about buffer. And again, an issue with adding photos. So again, I'll check that out and come back to you on that in terms of those issues. It can be hard to schedule photos. Sometimes you have to kind of schedule the words and the links. I know particularly on Hootsuite, and come back to add the photos. But anything that you can do to save yourself time, I think, is the benefit of the scheduling tools. Any other questions today? So future webinars coming up. If you missed the session that I did at National Freelancers Day a couple of weeks ago in London, I will be running that as a webinar on the 9th of September, how to create content for social media success. In October, I'll be talking about social selling, which is primarily about LinkedIn, but other social media platforms it does apply as well. In terms of content type, well, stories, particularly on Instagram, but Facebook, are a huge opportunity, increasingly being viewed. People are increasingly creating them. The stories that disappear kind of 24 hours are great for behind the scenes. So I'll be talking all about those in November. And at the beginning of December, I will do a roundup of all the changes that have happened this year, what that can mean to your business, and what's important to look out for, and what perhaps is just something shiny and distracting. I've included some resources in terms of weekly updates around what's happening on social media, some free resources on my website, but I'll also add in some others on there around scheduling and around hashtags according to your questions. If there are no further questions right now, it's 1 o'clock. So thank you for joining me, and I hope to speak to you soon.